The film opens in 1975. At night, three teenagers sneak into a pond near Parkersburg, West Virginia. They laugh and splash, unaware the water is poisoned. A factory boat appears, and the crew yells, chasing them away from the polluted pond. The story jumps to 1998. In a sleek Cincinnati law firm, partner Tom Terp congratulates Robert Bilott on becoming a junior partner. Their meeting is interrupted when two farmers, Wilbur Tennant and his brother Jim, arrive with a box of videotapes. They demand to see Rob. Wilbur insists DuPont is poisoning his cows, and no one in Parkersburg will help since DuPont owns the town. He came because Rob's grandmother once said her grandson was an environmental lawyer. Rob listens, but declines, explaining he defends chemical companies, not sues them. The farmers leave, disappointed. Later, Tom asks about the interruption. Rob explains the men were from his grandmother's town, but adds he didn't grow up there since his father served in the Air Force. Tom shrugs it off. Afterward, Rob joins colleagues outside. James Ross mocks his car and humble background. Rob stays silent and slips into a phone booth to call his grandmother, but she doesn't answer. Instead, he drives 130 miles to Parkersburg. On the way, he passes two young girls on bicycles. Both have blackened teeth. Something is wrong. At his grandmother's house, she shows him an old photo album with pictures of Wilbur's farm where Rob and his sister once played. Curious, Rob visits the farm. On the way, he passes a dumping site labeled Dry Run Creek, right beside Tennant's property. Wilbur walks him through what's been happening, showing cow organs grotesquely deformed and a stream where white stones have lost their color. The cows went mad after drinking the contaminated water. How many did you lose? Rob asks. 190, Wilbur replies. You tell me nothing's wrong. Wilbur tried for help, but no one cared. That night, Rob returns home. His wife, Sarah, is upset. He'd gone to West Virginia without telling her, and she thought he visited his mother. Rob explains he saw his grandmother to help a farmer named Wilbur. The tension lingers. At a firm party later, Rob meets Phil Donnelly, a senior DuPont lawyer. Rob casually asks if he's heard about the Tennant complaint. Phil smiles, saying the EPA already reviewed it, nothing serious. The next morning, Rob brings the EPA report to Wilbur's farm. As Wilbur reads it, his hands tremble with anger. The report blames him, claiming his cows died from neglect and poor feed. I've been farming my entire life. Sir, I'm trying to help. Stop moving. In the distance, a cow charges at them, crazed and foaming. Wilbur fires his gun. The two men stare at the body, horrified and silent. On the drive back, Rob notices how deep DuPont's roots run. The logos everywhere. Schools, parks, even trash bins. The company doesn't just exist here. It owns the town. Back at the firm, Rob plays Wilbur's tapes for Tom, video after video of suffering, deformed animals. He explains the case and asks permission to investigate. Tom hesitates. Suing DuPont is risky. But after a pause, he nods approval. Later, at a firm dinner, Rob confronts DuPont lawyer Phil Donnelly, asking about a chemical called PFOA. Phil stiffens, then snaps, shouting, "Sue me!" The outburst rattles the room. Even Tom looks up as Phil sneers, calling Rob a hick. Hope you know what you're doing. The next day, Tom reprimands Rob for airing private issues at a public event. DuPont is, after all, their client. But Rob stands firm, convinced the company is hiding something toxic. Tense but loyal, Tom gives Rob the go-ahead. Rob contacts local ex-DuPont lawyer Larry Winter, who files a lawsuit against DuPont the next morning. You're suing DuPont? Yes, ma'am. Good luck with that. Almost immediately, DuPont retaliates, sending hundreds of boxes crammed with files, an intentional information dump meant to bury Rob. But he refuses to quit, combing through each paper one by one. His persistence finally pays off. In one file, he finds another reference to PFOA, this time connected to something called C8. Seeking answers, Rob visits a chemistry expert. The man says he's never heard of PFOA, but knows it's made by 3M and pulled from production suddenly. C8, he explains, is a compound with an 8-carbon chain, another name for PFOA. He adds grimly, if you swallow this, it's like swallowing tire rubber. Meanwhile, in Parkersburg, the tenants are ostracized for opposing DuPont. The company funds everything in town, and now the locals turn against them. Wilbur's health declines. He's diagnosed with cancer. Coming home from the hospital one day, he finds his farm stripped bare. DuPont has confiscated everything, even the organs from dead cows. Rob, still consumed by the case, watches his kids play at home. His eyes fall on a book titled Funny Teeth. The phrase jolts him. The two girls he saw near Parkersburg had blackened teeth. The thought chills him. He calls the chemistry expert. What happens if a child drinks C8, he asks. The answer, their teeth turn black. Rob races back to the office and digs deeper. Each file reveals more horror. C8 wasn't just in the soil. DuPont had knowingly dumped it into the river. The entire community had been drinking poison water for decades. Late at night, Rob bursts into the kitchen, frantically examining their nonstick pans. Sarah wakes up, frightened. He tells her what he's discovered. PFOA, or C8, is a man-made chemical first used for military tanks and later became the key ingredient in Teflon. It spread into every home. Nonstick cookware, stain-resistant fabrics, food packaging, everywhere. DuPont, he explains, studied it for years, testing on lab animals and employees. They found cancer, birth defects in exposed mothers, and hid it all, continuing production because Teflon made them over $1 billion a year. Rob takes his findings to Tom, then confronts Phil from DuPont directly, calmly laying out the evidence. No more small talk. Later, he visits Wilbur and reveals the truth. Years ago, DuPont bought his late brother's land and dumped toxic sludge there. The runoff poisoned the stream and killed the cattle. Rob suggests a settlement, explaining that without scientific proof, the case will collapse. Every credible expert works for DuPont, but Wilbur refuses. Sick and angry, he wants justice, not money. He reveals that both he and his wife now have cancer. Rob is devastated. Back home, consumed by guilt, he breaks down in Sarah's arms. And there, he makes a decision. He won't stay silent. The next morning, he gathers everything. Internal memos, test results, files, and sends them to the EPA, the Department of Justice, and every relevant agency. He even volunteers to testify. Later, he convinces Wilbur to accept the settlement, not because it's over, but because the real fight is just starting. Soon, DuPont's phones begin ringing nonstop. The storm has arrived. As expected, Tom reprimands Rob for acting without approval, but still backs him, knowing he's right. In Washington, Rob testifies before the EPA, presenting his findings under oath. His words echo far beyond the courtroom. The U.S. government finally recognizes C8 as a serious threat. By 2001, DuPont admits, partially, that C8 has seeped into Parkersburg's water but claims it's within safe limits. Darlene Kiger gets one of those letters. Her first husband, a DuPont worker, had died young, and she'd undergone a hysterectomy before 35. Thousands share similar stories. Outraged, Rob files a massive class action suit on behalf of more than 70,000 residents. The goal isn't money, it's medical monitoring, accountability, and justice. But inside the law firm, not everyone supports him. At a partners meeting, Rob lays out how DuPont deceived the EPA and local authorities, using vague language and timed mailings to calm residents while avoiding liability. The room hesitates, especially James Ross, who worries about damaging the firm's reputation. Suing a major client like DuPont could ruin them. He calls for a vote to end the lawsuit. Before it happens, Tom speaks up. Angry, he demands to know who actually read Rob's report. This isn't about money, he says. It's about doing what's right. His voice trembles with passion. This is why people hate lawyers. We talk about what's safe for us. But these people, they've crossed the line. To hell with them. Rob takes the class action to a West Virginia court, teaming up with local attorney Harry Dietzler to push for medical monitoring. Since PFOA isn't federally regulated, they argue DuPont's own documents once listed 1 part per billion as safe. But DuPont's team counters, citing a new study that claims 150 parts per billion is safe, supported by a state environmental official. Shocked, Harry calmly asks who performed that study. The answer, DuPont itself. The official awkwardly shifts the topic, promising new safety standards soon. The sham is exposed. In 2005, the EPA fines DuPont $16.5 million for hiding C8 data. The story hits headlines nationwide. But in Parkersburg, fear spreads. Protesters burn down the Kiger's old house in anger. Think someone got the wrong house. One asks quietly. Meanwhile, Rob grows paranoid, checking under his car for bombs. Still, he pushes forward. Eventually, his firm negotiates a $235 million DuPont settlement. The catch: DuPont only pays for medical monitoring if an independent panel proves PFOA causes disease. To collect data, Rob's team offers $400 to locals donating blood. Nearly 70,000 people volunteer. Time passes. In 2009, Wilbur Tennant dies, never seeing justice. By 2012, frustration fills the community. The study drags on. Harassment continues. Rob's finances dwindle. Years on contingency pay, and stress damages his health. After collapsing, doctors tell Sarah he's had a minor stroke. They warn him to rest. Sarah confronts Tom, begging him to stop pressuring Rob after everything he sacrificed. Slowly, Rob recovers. One day at a gas station, a man with facial deformities greets him cheerfully, asking about sports scores. Rob stares silently. Proof of DuPont's legacy stands before him. Then one morning, the phone rings. After 7 long years, the scientific panel confirms it. C8 causes cancer. Rob returns home in tears. Tears of relief, of vindication. But at dinner, new trouble arises. DuPont is retreating from the deal, using legal loopholes to delay justice again. The system is broken. Corporations use lawyers not to confess, but to avoid responsibility. Yet Rob refuses to stop. Between 2015 and 2017, he files 3,535 injury cases individually. The judge jokes the suits might last until the year 2890. But finally, in 2017, DuPont agrees to pay $670.7 million in settlements. It took decades, but truth triumphs. Not because it's easy, but because one man refused to give up.